I need you to stop for a moment, not just pause, not just slow down. I mean, stop, the way you stop when something reaches through the noise of life and grabs you by the collar. Because what I am about to tell you is not just a story, it is a mirror. And when you look into it, really look, you are going to see something that might shake you. Something that might sting a little, because the best mirrors always do. What if the greatest love available to you in this season of your life, the steady, patient, extraordinary kind of love that people search decades to find, what if it was already standing right in front of you? And you sent it away, not out of cruelty, not out of malice, but because of one thing. One silent, fleeting half-second glance at the wrong thing. This is the story of Gerald Whitfield, a man worth $11 million, who dressed like he'd just come in from tending his garden, a man with the kindest heart in any room he entered, who was turned away because of the shoes on his feet. And it is the story of what that rejection cost the woman who made it, and what it gave Gerald in return. By the time we reach the end of this story together, I promise you something. You will never look at a quiet person the same way again. You will pause. You will look deeper. You will remember that the deepest rivers in this world do not make noise. They just run quiet, and they run deep. But first, let me ask you something personal. Have you ever dismissed someone too quickly? Maybe it was the car they drove in or didn't drive. Maybe it was the neighborhood they came from, or the clothes on their back, or just a quiet, invisible decision your mind made in 3 seconds flat. This person is not quite what I'm looking for. Most of us have done it. And most of us, at some point in this life, have been on the other side of it too. If either of those things is true for you, then this story was made for you. His name was Gerald. Gerald Whitfield. And the first time anyone laid eyes on Gerald, they saw a man in worn khaki trousers, a plain white shirt, and a pair of shoes that had clearly walked 1,000 miles. He was not flashy. He was not loud. He carried himself with the quiet, unhurried dignity of a man who had nothing left to prove, because he had already proved it long ago, to the only person whose opinion ever truly mattered to him, himself. He was in his early 50s, silver at the temples, fine lines carved gently around his eyes, the kind that come not from age alone, but from years of early mornings, hard decisions, private heartaches, and a lifetime of choosing, every single day, to keep going anyway. By every outward measure, he was an ordinary man, but here is what no one in that room knew. Gerald had built 3 companies from the ground up. He had created jobs for hundreds of families across 2 states. He had quietly donated to schools, children's hospitals, and rural communities that the rest of the world had long forgotten. And he had never once put his name on a single building. Gerald Whitfield was worth $11 million, and he was dressed like he'd just come in from his garden. Why? That, my friends, is exactly what we are going to find out. To truly understand Gerald, you have to understand where he came from. He was raised in a small town in rural Tennessee, the kind of town where everybody knew your name, where front porches were still used for sitting, where a handshake meant something and your word was your bond. His father, Earl Whitfield, was a carpenter. A quiet, steady man who smelled of sawdust and coffee and worked 6 days a week without complaint. His mother, Ruth, she was the kind of woman who could turn butterbeans and cornbread into a Thanksgiving feast just by the way she set the table. She'd put out the cloth napkins, light a small candle in the middle, and say the same thing every single Sunday. Gerald, it's not what's on the table that matters. It's who's sitting around it. He never forgot that. Not once, not in 50 years. Not ever. He worked his way through community college the way most men of his generation did, with calloused hands and an early alarm clock. He mowed lawns in summer, fixed fences in the fall, hauled lumber on weekends for $3 an hour. He was not the top of his class. He'll tell you that himself. But he had something that no textbook can teach. He had the kind of quiet, unbreakable determination that doesn't burn fast and bright. It just burns, steady, silent, year after year, never going out. By his mid-30s, a small landscaping company, built from nothing but a used truck and 2 hired hands, By his mid-40s, property and construction. By his early 50s, he had invested carefully, lived modestly, and found himself, almost without meaning to, a genuinely wealthy man. But money never touched who Gerald was at his core. Not one single bit. He still drove the same kind of truck his daddy drove. He wore simple clothes, ate simple food, and went to the same small church he'd attended since his 20s. He believed, in the marrow of his bones, that what a man owned had nothing to do with what a man was worth. And then, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in late September, Gerald walked into a community fundraising event at the local library, and there she was. Her name was Diane Calloway. 54 years old, recently retired from 28 years of teaching school. She laughed with her whole face. She listened like she meant it. When she spoke to someone, she gave them her full attention, and people felt it. They felt seen. Gerald watched her from across the room for a full 10 minutes before he gathered himself and walked over. "I'm Gerald. I grew up about 40 miles east of here. I'm Diane. I grew up right here and never quite found a reason to leave." They talked for 2 hours that evening. About old Tennessee, about their grown children scattered across different states, about books. She loved Steinbeck. He loved Twain. About what it felt like to arrive at this chapter of life with your health, your mind, and a quiet list of things you still wanted to do. It was, as Gerald would say months later, the best conversation he'd had in years. Over the following weeks, Gerald courted Diane the old-fashioned way. He called when he said he would, not a minute late. He showed up when he made a plan. He brought her wildflowers that he had actually stopped his truck on the side of Route 9 to pick himself. A handful of purple clover and yellow black-eyed Susans, because he thought she'd like the colors. Not a bought bouquet, a handful of roadside flowers from a man who paid attention. He remembered her sister's name, Barbara, mentioned just once, weeks earlier. He remembered the Italian restaurant because of something she'd said about her late mother's pasta. He remembered black coffee with half a spoon of sugar. He never mentioned his companies, never mentioned his net worth, never steered any conversation toward what he had built or what he owned. He showed up simply as Gerald, a man in worn khakis, with a good heart and steady hands and a way of making a woman feel like the most important person in whatever room they were standing in. And for a little while, a beautiful, golden, fragile little while, something real was quietly taking root between them. Diane smiled when his name appeared on her phone. She said yes every time he asked her to dinner. She told her sister Barbara she hadn't felt this comfortable around a man in a long time, but quietly, beneath that warmth, something else was stirring. A doubt. A hesitation, the kind that doesn't announce itself loudly. It just whispers, over and over. In the small hours of the night, Gerald didn't look like the man she had pictured for this chapter of her life. He drove an old truck. His clothes were plain. He never took her anywhere expensive. He never talked about travel or investments or the kind of retirement she had imagined. And just when Gerald had quietly gathered every last ounce of his courage, just when he was ready to open his heart completely, Diane made a decision he never saw coming. It was a Saturday evening in early November. The air had that particular chill that comes to Tennessee in the fall. Not brutal, but honest. The kind of cold that reminds you winter is coming and you'd better be ready. They had just returned from a small Italian restaurant on Main Street. Checkered tablecloths, candles in wine bottles. Gerald had chosen it because 3 weeks earlier, in the middle of a completely different conversation, Diane had mentioned that her late mother used to make the best homemade pasta she'd ever tasted. He had remembered. He always remembered. Dinner had been warm, easy. They had laughed. Lingered over coffee. Gerald had felt, for the first time in a long time, that something in his life was exactly right. And then they were standing on the front porch of Diane's home. She turned to face him. And Gerald saw it immediately, something in her expression that had been prepared, perhaps, before he'd even arrived that evening. Something deliberate, something final. "Gerald," she said carefully, "I think you are a truly good man. And I want you to know I mean that sincerely, but I have to be honest with you. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I just don't believe we're the right fit for each other. I'm at a stage of my life where I'm looking for someone who is more settled, more established." She paused, and in that pause, her eyes moved. Just once, briefly, downward, to his jacket. He saw it. The way quiet, observant people always see the thing that wasn't meant to be seen. He understood completely. And what happened inside Gerald in that moment? What happened in the space between that glance and his next breath? That is something most people will never know. Because Gerald never spoke of it to anyone. Not once, but I will tell you he felt it. All of it, every bit of it. The way a 52-year-old man who has buried a father, built a business, survived heartbreak and kept going anyway, still feels it when someone looks through him like he is made of glass. Like he is not enough. Like the sum total of who he is. His steadiness, his patience, his wildflowers, his memory, his quiet, faithful heart. None of it counted. Because of the jacket she glanced at. That kind of pain has no dramatic shape. It doesn't roar. It doesn't collapse. It just settles, deep in the chest, like a stone dropped into still water. And the ripples go outward for a very long time. Gerald stood still for a long moment. He did not argue. He did not reach for words to defend himself. He did not, as a lesser man might have, pull out his wallet and show her what was inside. He simply looked at her with those calm, steady eyes, and he nodded. Slowly. The way a man nods when he has accepted something that costs him dearly. "I understand, Diane," he said quietly. "I appreciate your honesty. I truly do. I hope life brings you everything you're looking for." He shook her hand, gently, like a gentleman. He walked down the porch steps, climbed into his old pickup truck, and pulled the door shut behind him, and for a long moment, he just sat there. He did not start the engine right away. He sat in the dark cab of that truck, in the cold November air, with his hands resting on the steering wheel, and he let himself feel it. All of it, the disappointment, the sting of being looked at and found wanting, the particular aching loneliness of being seen on the outside and missed entirely on the inside, of offering someone something real and watching them hand it back, unopened, because the wrapping wasn't what they expected. He was not angry. Gerald was never a man who turned pain into anger. He was just, quietly, profoundly heartbroken. The way a good man gets heartbroken, without noise, without bitterness, with a kind of dignified grief that he would carry privately and heal from privately, on his own terms and in his own time. He started the engine. He drove home through the dark Tennessee roads, and he did not look back. "Now, I want to stop here and speak to you directly. If you are in your 50s, your 60s, or beyond, you have lived long enough to know something it takes younger people decades to learn. You know that the finest human beings you have ever encountered in your life were rarely the ones with the most polished surfaces. Think about the great people in your own story. The teacher who changed your life. Was she driving a luxury car? The neighbor who showed up when everything fell apart. Was he wearing an expensive suit? The friend who told you the truth when everyone else told you what you wanted to hear. Did they have an impressive title after their name? The most extraordinary people have almost always arrived quietly, without announcement, in ordinary clothes, with steady hands and unhurried eyes. Life has tried to teach us this, again and again. And still, we forget, Diane stood on her porch and watched those taillights disappear down the road. She didn't know it yet, but she had just made the most consequential decision of her life. She would understand that soon enough. It was a Monday morning, 2 days later. Diane was in her kitchen, the same kitchen where she had rehearsed what she planned to say to Gerald, standing right there at that counter 2 nights before. She was holding a cup of coffee, looking out the window at the gray November yard, when her phone rang. It was her friend Carol. They talked about ordinary things for a few minutes. Carol's grandchildren, an upcoming holiday dinner, the weather. And then the way conversations do, it shifted. "Oh, did you happen to see that piece in the Tennessee Business Journal last week?" Carol asked. There was a full profile on this man, a Gerald Whitfield, the one who just donated an entire new wing to the Children's Hospital over in Clarksville. They're saying he's worth $11 million. Built everything himself from nothing, starting with a little landscaping company back in the 80s. Remarkable story. Quiet man, apparently. Doesn't seek any attention whatsoever. You wouldn't know it to look at him. The coffee cup stopped halfway to Diane's lips. What did you say his name was? Gerald Whitfield. Why, do you know him? The phone felt like it had turned to stone in her hand. She set it down on the counter. Slowly. Carefully. The way you set something down when your hands have gone unreliable. She stood in that kitchen in the cold gray morning light, and she let the full weight of what she had done settle over her. Not quickly, not all at once. The way a cold fog rolls into a valley, slowly, completely, until there is nowhere left uncovered. Nowhere left to hide. She thought about the wildflowers. The purple clover and yellow black-eyed Susans from the side of Route. She thought about the way he had remembered her sister's name. Barbara, weeks after she had mentioned it just once. She thought about the Italian restaurant, the checkered tablecloths, the reason he had chosen it, because of something she had said about her mother's pasta. She thought about the black coffee with half a spoon of sugar. The phone calls always on time, the plans always kept. And then she thought about the glance, that one small, careless, half-second glance at his jacket. She sat down at the kitchen table. She put her face in her hands, and she wept. Not because Gerald Whitfield was worth $11 million. That is not what broke her. What broke her was the quieter, plainer truth that lived underneath the money. The truth that had been true all along. Long before the business journal, long before Carol's phone call. She had been handed, freely, gently, without condition, a genuinely good man, patient as the tides, steady as old timber. The kind of man her own mother would have called a keeper without a moment's hesitation. And she had handed him back, because his shoes were worn. She picked up her phone 3 times that week to call him. 3 times she held it. 3 times she set it back down. What would she say? "I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were wealthy." No. She knew in the clearest, most honest part of herself that there was nothing she could say that would not make the whole thing worse. Because the real mistake had nothing to do with money, and now that the money was known, it was impossible to ever separate the two again. Any apology, whatever shape it took, would always sound like the wrong thing said for the wrong reason. She never called. And in the weeks and months that followed, Diane carried that weight the way people carry the heavy things, quietly, privately, in the small hours of ordinary mornings, standing at the same kitchen counter, looking out at the same yard, holding her coffee with both hands. She was not a bad person. I want to say that clearly. She was a human being who made a human mistake. She let the surface of a thing block her view of its depth. She listened to the wrong whisper at the wrong moment. And by the time she understood what she had done, the door had already closed. That is perhaps the most painful part of her story. Not the losing, but the understanding, the clear, unflinching, unavoidable understanding of exactly what was lost and why, and that it cannot be undone. Some lessons arrive as gifts, and some arrive as grief. Meanwhile, Gerald healed. I want you to know that clearly, and I want you to feel good about it. Because Gerald was not a man who stayed broken. He grieved, quietly, privately, the way he did everything. He allowed himself a full season of it. He felt the loss of what might have been. He sat with it on winter evenings in his old house, with the fire going and a book open in his lap, and his mind somewhere else entirely. But Gerald had buried enough heartache in his lifetime to know one non-negotiable truth. Grief is a season, not a sentence. You feel it fully, and then you choose to live. He went back to his work. He went back to his garden on Saturday mornings. He went back to his small church on Sundays, the same one he'd attended for 30 years, where people knew his name and nobody cared what he was worth. And it was there, on an unremarkable Wednesday evening in February, at a church potluck dinner of all places, that he sat down across a folding table from a woman named May. May Foster was 57 years old. A retired third-grade school teacher who had spent 3 decades teaching 8-year-olds to read, and who had, by her own cheerful admission, Absolutely no patience for pretense of any kind. She was plain-spoken and funny in the dry, unhurried way of someone who has seen enough of life to find it genuinely amusing. Within 20 minutes of sitting across that folding table from Gerald Whitfield, she had beaten him at checkers 3 times in a row and laughed about it. Without a shred of mercy each time, he was completely and utterly enchanted. May learned about Gerald's wealth, eventually, small towns being what they are. But when the subject came up, she looked at him evenly and said, "Gerald, I sat down across from you because you made me laugh on a Wednesday night over a board game. Everything else is none of my business, and it isn't going to change a single thing." He had never in his life felt so completely seen. They were married 18 months later, on a golden Saturday in October, under a big old oak tree in the churchyard, surrounded by everyone who loved them. Gerald wore a simple navy suit and a brand new pair of shoes that May had quietly purchased as a wedding gift and left on his doorstep the morning of the ceremony, with a small handwritten note tucked inside. "You walked a long road to find me. You deserve comfortable shoes for whatever comes next." Gerald kept that note in his wallet every single day, for the rest of his life. Friends, let's step outside the story now. Just you and me, because I have 3 things I need to say to you directly. 3 truths that Gerald's life carried. 3 things your generation, more than any generation alive today, still understands in your bones. The first truth: character, real character, will always outvalue appearance. Every single time. In the end, in the quiet accounting of a life well lived, it is not the polished surfaces that remain. It is the steady ones, the ones who showed up when they said they would, the ones who remembered your sister's name, the ones who stopped on the side of the road to pick you wildflowers because they thought you'd like the colors. That is the wealth that lasts. That is the wealth no market can touch and no recession can take. You know this. You have always known it. Life has been trying to remind you of it for decades. The second truth: the most painful regrets of a human life rarely come from the things we did. They come from the things we dismissed too quickly, the doors we closed before we fully understood what was behind them, the people we underestimated, not out of cruelty but out of one careless moment, one glance, one whisper of doubt we listened to when we should have looked deeper. If there is someone in your life right now that you have not looked at carefully enough, someone you have been measuring against the wrong ruler, this is your moment. Look again. Look deeper. The greatest gifts in this life have almost never arrived in impressive packaging. The third truth, and this one is for the Geralds among you: your worth, your real, immovable God-given worth, is not determined by whether someone else recognizes it. Gerald never needed Diane to see him clearly in order to know who he was. He walked down those porch steps with his dignity completely intact. He sat in that dark truck, in the cold November air, and he felt the pain. And then he drove home. He healed, he lived. He found May. He kept the note. If you have spent years, decades, perhaps one being overlooked, underestimated, dismissed by people who only ever looked at the surface of you, hear this clearly: the right people will always find you. And when they do, they will want exactly who you already are. Not a dressed-up version, not a louder version, not a more impressive version. They will sit down across a folding table, beat you at checkers, and laugh without mercy. And you will feel, perhaps for the first time in a long time, completely and entirely seen. That moment is coming. Do not give up before it arrives. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been the Gerald in someone's story, the one who was quietly overlooked and had to walk to the truck alone and carry that weight home in silence? Or have you had a Diane moment, a person, an opportunity, a door that you closed too quickly and realized only afterward what you had let go? Share your story in the comments below. Every single comment in this community gets read, and I promise you that your story matters here, more than you know. If today's story moved you, if it stirred something real in your chest, please share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. A friend going through a hard season, a daughter chasing the wrong things, a neighbor who has forgotten what they are truly worth, One share from you could be the thing that changes their day, or more. And if this is your first time here, welcome. This is a place for people who believe that real love, real character, and real wisdom still matter in this world. Please subscribe so you never miss a story. Because every week, we come back here, together. And we remember what it truly means to live a life of depth, of grace, and of meaning. Gerald Whitfield kept a small handwritten note in his wallet every day for the rest of his life. You walked a long road to find me. You deserve comfortable shoes for whatever comes next. May we all be so lucky to walk long enough and bravely enough to find the one who sees us. Not for what we own, not for what we wear, but for who we have always. Quietly, steadily been. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next story.